Teach people the value of the present moment. It's the only moment that actually exists is
Mhm.
this one right now. And I think people forget that. It's very, very easy to get caught up in our lives and our to-do lists.
Mhm.
And I just think that, when I have people introduce me now, I tell them, that when we were young, it used to be we would go to bed and they would read us a story that began once upon a time.
Mhm.
And, if we bring that to ourselves now, that once upon a time, and what is the story you are telling yourselves? Not what other people are telling you, but what is the story you're telling yourself in your own head? And, where is it most valuable to be placing your attention in a past we can't change or a future that hasn't even yet happened?
Welcome to Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast, the show where we ask the big question, what will they say about you when you're gone? Each week, we sit down with icons, trailblazers, and legends in the making to dive into their stories, scandals, and the legacies they're leaving behind. And now, here's your host, the video godfather himself, Lou Bortone.
Hey, boys and girls in video and podcast land. It's Lou, and I'm back with the Oh Shit, I'm Dead Legacy Podcast. Hello, Harriet. How are you?
Hi, Lou. I love that title.
It's a little wacky, but that's what I like to do, keep it a little interesting. So, Harriet is a colleague of mine and a friend, and we met at Michael Port and Amy Port's heroic public speaking event, which, I've made such good friends there. Everybody's so cool from that group. Tell us a little bit about your background, and thank you again for being here, but just your background and how you came to be where you are today.
Well, I thank you for inviting me, Lou. You know what? I think at my core, I will always see myself as a nurse. I'm a nurse who teaches mindfulness and have been teaching now in the corporate world mindfulness a little over 20 years. So,
That's great.
yeah, that's truly, that is my passion. That is my raison d'etre.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, we all need like a reason to get up in the morning because some mornings I wonder if I should just hide under the covers. So we met at Heroic Public Speaking, and I know you're doing a lot more speaking and getting out there, things like that. What is your talk about?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I teach people the value of the present moment. It's the only moment that actually exists is
Mhm.
this one right now. And I think people forget that. It's very, very easy to get caught up in our lives and our to-do lists.
Mhm.
And I just think that, when I have people introduce me now, I tell them, that when we were young, it used to be we would go to bed and they would read us a story that began once upon a time.
Mhm.
And, if we bring that to ourselves now, that once upon a time, and what is the story you are telling yourselves? Not what other people are telling you, but what is the story you're telling yourself in your own head? And, where is it most valuable to be placing your attention in a past we can't change or a future that hasn't even yet happened?
Exactly. And I love that. And that's exactly why I wanted to speak with you, because not only, your fascinating background as a nurse, but because you talk about mindfulness. And I just thought of the line. It's so funny. I think John Lennon had a song that said, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. Do you remember that?
Oh, I love that line. I'll never
Mhm.
forget the first time I heard that line. Love it. And I have no idea, but in the fifth grade, when I was 10 years old, I opened up my little black and white copybook one day and wrote, "Life is but a moment in time."
Wow.
And no one ever told me that. I have no idea why I did it, but I wrote that in my little book. And I wrote it on the first day of school. And all the way through elementary, middle, high school, college, and grad school. And on the
Wow.
first day of class, I always wrote, "Life is but a moment in time."
That's awesome. That's pretty damn deep for a kid.
Right.
That really. So, this podcast is about, we kind of go in a lot of different directions, but it's really about legacy, but really about making the most of the time while we're here. So how did your experience being a nurse kind of form your opinions about legacy or what happens when we're gone?
Yeah. I began working in hospitals as soon as I possibly could. I began as a candy stringer when I was 15.
Wow.
And it's probably because when I was very young, when I was around, I don't know, 6 years old, I inadvertently burned myself and ended up they didn't even have a burn unit. I ended up isolation in a children's hospital. And they were so kind to me that I ended up wanting to work in healthcare and help other people. And so at 15, you get in the hospital and you realize that life is, it happens so quickly. Our lives can change in a moment. And when I ended up becoming, I went and became a nurse's aide then. I remember talking with a patient once and the nurses were waiting for me outside the door, trying to get me to go to dinner. They're like, come on, we only have a short period of time. And the woman who I was helping, the patient, was probably in her early 20s and she had cancer and she couldn't get comfortable in bed. And she kept saying, can you fix my pillow? Can you fix my pillow? And I stayed there and fixed it till she was comfortable. And then I caught up with the nurses. We went to dinner. I came back. And when I came back, she was no longer alive, you know?
Mhm.
And I still think about that woman.
Mhm.
I mean, it's been over 40 years that
Wow.
I had that experience. And yet I think to myself, what if I hadn't stopped and made sure that woman was comfortable before I ran to dinner?
Wow. Oh my
So you
gosh.
just never know. You just absolutely never know when your last moment is going to be.
Yeah. And I'm sure as a nurse, you saw, life and death situations all the time. It probably gives you a greater appreciation for, like you say, living in the moment and being mindful. And I love the title of your book, by the way. Tell folks what that is.
Yeah. So the title of my book is called Perfect Attendance, Being
Mhm.
Present for Life. I should hold it up here.
Yeah.
I just realized.
I have it on my Kindle. I got to check it out. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the title of the book. It's funny that the reason why I chose that title for the book, my mom was 58 and she was in the hospital and she was
Mhm.
dying of cancer. And I said, what's on your mind right now? Because she looked like she was really concerned about something. And she said, oh, I hadn't had a sick day in like 7 years and now I blew my record. And I was like, oh, ah, that I literally made a PowerPoint and put it on the wall of her hospital room that
Mhm.
said perfect attendance is being present for life, not
Mhm.
work,
Right.
not work.
Yeah.
We want to be present for our lives. So that's why I named the title of my book Perfect Attendance.
That's cool. And it's, interesting you talk about your being at the hospital and being a caregiver. When I was little, I was in the hospital, in and out of the hospital quite a bit.
Really? I never knew.
And I had like a lot of stomach issues. So, but the truth is, I loved going to the hospital because everybody took care of me. They were, nurses all over the place. Of course, I fell in love with all my nurses at the age of 12 or whatever. But I'm like, what? 3 meals a day? I was so psyched. They get to pick out the little things on the old cards that they used to do. So I was like, "Woo, more. And then one time, my mom thought I didn't want to go to school because I was like doubled over in pain. And she's like, you have a test today. You're faking, you're faking, you're faking. And I finally convinced her to take me to the ER and my appendix was about to burst. I'm really glad she believed me that time.
Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah,
That was
that's really, really serious. When you're a child in the hospital,
mm,
everybody has had these things happen to them in their life, right?
mhm,
But it's how we see them, right? I mean,
right.
I'm sure that having had that experience with a hospital and being burned, I mean, I had male nurses and a female doctor. I mean, I remember all this. I
Mhm.
had to be wrapped in a sheet and take it to a Hubbard tank and have my wound degraded 3 times a day. I'm sure they gave me medication for it since I don't remember the
Yeah.
pain, but I remember the respect and the way in
Mhm.
which they cared for me. And they were so caring. And,
Yeah.
that resonates with a child. And that memory, instead of being afraid of going to a hospital or afraid of ever
Mhm.
having hot tea again, I love hot tea and I drank it this morning. And,
Yeah.
it's really how we see these stories in our lives.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know. I think my experiences in the hospital growing up, I hope gave me more empathy and compassion and stuff like that.
It
So,
was. It truly
and
did.
yeah. And I know I mentioned before we started talking, my grandmother was an RN and she was working at Boston City Hospital, which was kind of like where, the not so upper class folks, like the ER and gunshots and things like, and this is in the 30s and 40s. I'm like, oh my God, to have been a female nurse in that kind of a hospital. And the only regret I have is that, when I was born, my grandmother was there. No, actually, I was having my tonsils on. I got all kinds of little dramas, but and the gauze got stuck in my throat. And my grandmother was there, and thank God our doctor like reached down and pulled the stuff out because I was turning blue or whatever. And after that day, my grandmother never went back, never wore a nurse's outfit again. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I made you quit nursing then.
Well, I would not, I would let go of the guilt.
Yeah.
I wish she was alive because when you get a group of nurses together, we usually laugh nonstop when we start
Yeah.
telling stories. It's like getting a group of firemen or police officers or whatever together. We have quite a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So I know she had some doozies, and I think she was just teasing me like, oh, that's the day I quit nursing when you stop breathing. So, but it's interesting because she was there when so many of my cousins and her grandkids were born. So that's kind of cool that she was a maternity nurse doing all that fun stuff. So when I talk about, like not to get too deep or anything, but when I talk about legacy or sort of end of life stuff, what do you think? How do you want to be remembered?
Well, it's interesting. I think that most importantly, I want to be remembered for the impact that I've made. It's not so much that I want people thinking about me, but I want them to be thinking about something I've taught them, right? That's the teacher in me. I always say that I teach because of one reason. It's one word, two syllables, and it's disease, dis-ease. So I teach to promote ease in people's lives. So I really hope that my legacy is such that they pause and they think of maybe the importance of me sharing how I want them to be making memories every day and letting go of anger and, noticing where they are in their lives.
Yeah. And that's, that again, with your teaching mindfulness, and we go back to that John Lennon, life is what happens to you while you're busy making it. Everybody's so caught up in the day to day and things like that. Do you have any sort of practices or thoughts about like, okay, don't worry so much about what people are going to say when you're not here. Do something today that makes people remember you today.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, exactly what you just said. And people could understand that. That is everything. I mean, it truly is. Because I encourage people to pause even every hour. They can set a little timer with their watch. I mean, every time they transition, one of the ways that I teach people this practice is about when they wash their hands, right? There's over 1 billion with a B, over 1 billion people that don't have access to clean, safe water in this world.
Gosh. Yeah.
Every time you wash your hands, use all of your senses, right? And notice if you are judging, like the water's too cold, it's too hot, my hands look this, but letting go of all of that. But just it is such a quick and easy way to bring yourself into the present moment. Every time I touch water, whether I'm getting a drink, washing a dish, washing my hands, it's something we do so frequently. And I always try to make it that opportunity. Just pause for a moment.
Yeah, that's a really good idea because I think of when my twins were really, really little, I always say the first 2 years was a blur. And it's kind of sad because we were just so immersed in taking care of these two babies that I don't even know what the hell else was going on. I feel like I was, walking in a fog. So what I tried to do again, was just be there. Like I'm so fortunate because I got to work at home for most of my career and go to their games and make my own hours. So like I feel like, okay, well, at least I was present for them. I haven't been present for myself. But anything else in terms of just saying like, okay, what can we do now just so that we're not on our deathbeds thinking like, I wish I would have blank,
Yeah, I really truly think it is making that opportunity to pause every single time we go through a transition. My sister's a therapist and I'm always saying to her, doesn't everybody do this already? And she's like, no, they don't all do it every day. So every time we transition, when we're going from one meeting to another meeting, when we're at home and we go from one room to another room, the more that we can make these memories to really check in with ourselves to see if we are present, it's so valuable. You mentioned about being present for your children and being present for their games. Those memories that you've made, they will live in your heart for I never realized the value of the word legacy. I mean, I was never blessed with children, right? I mean, it was
Mhm.
something I always wanted, never ever had the opportunity to have children. And, it wasn't until March of 2020, when the world shut down for our first global pandemic, that
Yeah.
a CEO reached out and asked me to create a global mindfulness program for his company.
Mm. Oh,
And
wow.
I ended up working nonstop, 7 days a week. And, he wanted to be a train the trainer, and I was training his
Yeah.
colleagues. I mean, his employees all over the world, Japan and China and, Brazil and Argentina and France and the UK. And for the first time in my life, I had this sense of legacy that,
Mhm.
to be able to positively impact the world. I mean, that's my reason, right, on a daily basis,
Yeah.
but be able to do it during the global pandemic and to
Right.
know that the ripples of that were just endless. It was my very first feeling ever that I was like, wow, I think I've created a
Mhm.
life.
That's awesome. And it's funny because I
Mhm.
think some good stuff did come out of that pandemic of having to make us all stop and slow down. And it's so funny because when you were talking about recognizing the transitions, like I just had this aha. I'm like, okay, now I know why, I spend a lot of time in it. Now I know why the Italians seem so much happier than us because they take a meal and celebrate it. They take a moment and celebrate it. They, sit at the bar and have whatever, but they're really, just sort of, I guess, present, not like looking at their phone saying, when's my next meeting? Um,
I remember teaching in Buenos Aires a week-long program, and I remember being told ahead of time when I got there, they said, "They're gonna take 2 hours for lunch," and I was like, "Come on." I was like, "Yeah, how will we get through this program? 2 hours for lunch?" And
right.
my colleague, Mauricio, who's such a dear, who was my fellow trainer from Brazil, he's like, don't worry, it's gonna be absolutely fine," and it was. It was
Mhm.
absolutely fine, but to work with people that were totally different culturally, where they
Mhm.
would come in every morning and say hello to every single person in the room. They would
Wow.
make that time. "How was your evening? How are you doing today?" They would
Mhm.
embrace each other, they would kiss. And then I remember going from Argentina to New Jersey a week later,
Yeah.
teaching the exact same program, and I'm standing there and I'm like, no one has said to me, "Good morning." No one had
Yeah.
asked me how my night is. No one has kissed me. No one has hugged me.
Yeah.
It is exactly what they do in Italy.
Hmm. Yeah. So, well, if you're in Jersey, I mean, if you're lucky, you might get a "How you doing?" But that's about it. So,
It's okay. I'm from Jersey, so
yeah,
I can
that's
do
good.
it. All right.
So, tell me a little bit before we wrap up about the book. What inspired you to write it? What the kind of the main message and all that. Like I say, I have it on my Kindle, but folks who haven't seen it,
Yeah. Well, I purposely, I actually trademarked the saying place a pause. So throughout the entire book, I've put in examples and of how you can actually place a pause
hmm
and the value of that in your day. So I,
yeah,
I wanted it to be a book of stories that, is based around the 9 attitudes that we use to cultivate a mindfulness practice. So I
hmm
thought that would be, really helpful for people, so how to bring gratitude into their life, how to actually let go when they
yeah,
find themselves ruminating about something, like I said, either from the past or the future. So, all of those little simple, easy ways in which they can connect with themselves each and every.
that's cool. Yeah, I like whenever I do the podcast, I always try to end like on a lighthearted note and ask a few fun questions. Like, okay, they're making the Harriet Stein story or Hulu or HBO. Who would you like to play you in the movie?
So, not surprisingly, as a nurse, I loved the TV show Nurse Jackie. And
Mm,
there's an actress in that show by the name of Merritt Weaver, and she
yeah.
won an Emmy for
Wow.
playing that role in Nurse Jackie. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna go with Merritt Weaver. She's
Nice.
hysterical.
Let's assume like, that where we go afterwards is one big party. Who do you want to
Who do I want to
hang out with?
hang out with? Oh my goodness.
Hang out with, like have dinner with, and let's say it's like, hey, rock stars, movie stars, whatever. So,
Well, my 19th birthday, my mom was really kind that got me tickets to see Frank Sinatra.
oh wow.
So, like a fun person, but yeah, I think
Yeah, that's a good one. I would definitely have drinks with Frank on the other
You know,
on
it's
the other side.
It's funny. I've
And I,
never told anybody this, Lou, but I will tell you, because since you're talking about like what comes afterwards,
right,
I always have felt that my real job in life is after people die, I welcome them to whatever is next. And
wow.
I have no idea why I have ever felt that way for decades, but I have.
Mhm.
And I thought, wow, maybe I am actually Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
Think
that's
about
so cool. Yeah, I know. Like when I think of that question, like who do you want to hang out with in the afterlife? I know I should probably say something like Nelson Mandela, but I go right to you're like, oh, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. I want to be in the Rat Pack and hang out with those guys. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all want to see our family and friends, right? But
Mhm.
I think that there are so many people. I just think of all the historical people. And
Right.
I mean, all the people who founded this country, how fascinating would it be to talk to them
Oh, I
and
know.
see if they have any idea?
They're currently rolling over in their graves, as we say. So
It would be interesting. It would be very interesting. But
yeah.
I do believe in reincarnation. So I do think that we're worth it.
I keep saying like I need to be recycled one of these days. So yeah, I think I think one of my friends, Patty's like, well, you just keep coming back until you get it right. But yeah, I love your message about that's great to think about what's on the other side, but like all you have is right this minute. So
And make it count.
mm, that's
Mhm.
awesome. So where could folks reach you, buy your book, book you to speak, all that good stuff?
Yeah, it's really easy to connect with me. My website is my name, so it's harrietstein.com, and they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I just love fun and engaging programs. I actually booked my friend Teresa for my funeral because she does stand-up comedy on the weekends. She said to me once, Harriet, I tell people when I do leadership training that I do stand-up comedy. She goes, they
Yeah.
don't expect you to be funny. And
Yeah.
I really like to bring humor in when I teach because I
Hmm.
believe when they are laughing, they are learning.
Yeah.
And so I like to have engaging programs.
I love that. Do you have, speaking of that, like I keep giving my wife, like, oh, put this on my funeral playlist. Like I have these songs. Do you have, and I call it a walk off song. Like, on stage you have a walk on song, but what would be your walk off song?
Oh, that's an easy one because, like I said, my sister's a therapist, and she said, "What is the four-letter word to demonstrate love in a marriage?" And
Hmm.
it's the same four-letter word to demonstrate love to your children, to demonstrate love to your family and friends, and the word is time. And because right now there are at least 100 apps listening to me, when I talk with my phone next to me, I got on YouTube to look something up and the song popped up, and it's by Josh Turner, and the name
Okay.
of the song is called "Time Is Love," and
Oh,
it's
wow.
the greatest song because that four-letter word to
Hmm.
demonstrate love is
Yep.
time. It's
That's
time
perfect.
when we spend time with our loved ones.
Perfect. That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Harriet, for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in real life very soon.
Likewise, thank you so much, Lou.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast. Please subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast, and do it now while you're still alive and kicking. Check out other episodes at ohshitimdead.com.